The crack in your wall might be nothing at all. Or it might be the cheapest warning you will ever get that the ground underneath your house is moving. And the only difference between those two is a shape most people never learn to read. You know the crack I mean. The one climbing through the drywall, stepping up the brick, creeping out from the corner of a doorway. And the instinct is always the same. Fill it, sand it, paint it smooth and forget it was ever there. Before you do, give me a few minutes. Because once you can read the shape of a crack, you will know in seconds whether you are looking at a house simply settling in or a foundation quietly beginning to fail. And there is one specific pattern, one I will show you before the end, that means you stop what you are doing and call someone today. Let me show you how to tell the difference. First, take a breath. Because nearly every house on Earth has cracks, and most of them mean nothing. A house is not a rigid object. Wood frames shrink as they dry. Plaster and drywall expand and contract with every change in humidity. The whole structure shifts slightly with the seasons, and in its first few years, a new home settles onto its foundation and sheds a crop of small cracks as it does. A thin, hairline crack running straight up a wall, a faint spiderweb in old plaster, a short line at the corner of a window. These are the house breathing. They are cosmetic, and you can fill them with a clear conscience. So the goal is not to make you afraid of every line in your wall. It is to teach you the few shapes that actually mean something. Because here is the part that changes everything. Once you learn 3 simple things to look at, you can read almost any crack in about 10 seconds and know whether to shrug or to worry. It comes down to a crack's shape, its width, and whether it is growing. Start with shape, because it tells you the most. A crack that runs straight up and down, thin and vertical, is almost always harmless settling. The ones that should get your attention run on a diagonal. When a crack climbs at an angle out of the corner of a door or a window, at roughly 45 degrees, that is stress concentrating where the wall is weakest, and it is worth watching. But the shape that matters most, the one I most want you to recognize, appears in brick and block walls. It is called a stair-step crack, and it does exactly what the name says. It climbs the wall diagonally by following the mortar lines, across, up, like a staircase. A stair-step crack in masonry is the classic signature of differential settlement, which is the polite term for one part of your foundation sinking at a different rate than the rest. Now add width. A hairline you can barely catch a fingernail in is one thing. A crack wider than about 1/4 of an inch, wide enough to slide a coin into, is a different conversation entirely. And then add growth, which is the most important of the 3. A crack that appeared once and has not moved in a year is far less worrying than a thin one that is visibly longer than it was last month. A living, growing crack is a house still in motion. And here's the single pattern I promised you, the one that means do not wait. A horizontal crack running straight sideways across a basement or foundation wall is not settling. That is the soil outside pushing inward against the wall. And it is the one kind of crack that can mean the wall itself is starting to bow and fail. Pair any of these with doors that have suddenly started sticking, windows that no longer close right, or a gap opening where the wall meets the ceiling, and the house is no longer whispering. It is telling you plainly that it is moving. So let me put this back in proportion before you go inspect every wall in the house. Finding a crack does not mean your home is falling down, and most of what you find will be the harmless kind. A house is allowed to move. It is supposed to move, a little, forever. The reframe I want to leave you with is simple. A crack is not good news or bad news on its own. It is information, and the shape it takes is the difference between a wall that is just relaxing into place and a foundation that needs your attention this week. The crack is not your enemy. Not knowing how to read it is. And here is what the serious cracks are really telling you, because it connects to something most people never think about. A foundation does not move on its own. It moves because the ground underneath it moves, and the ground moves because of water. Soil that is full of clay swells when it gets wet, and shrinks when it dries out. And a foundation sitting on it rises and falls with every wet season and drought, like a boat on a slow tide. Poor drainage makes it worse. The same overflowing gutter, the same downspout dumping rain at the base of the wall, the same ground sloping toward the house instead of away. The crack in your wall is the visible end of an invisible movement happening in the dirt beneath your feet. Its real value is the early warning it gives you, while the fix is still cheap. So here is what you actually do. And notice that filling it is the last step, not the first. Do not just spackle it over, because a smooth wall with the movement still underneath only hides the gauge you need to read. And do not panic and hand thousands of dollars to the first foundation company that offers a free inspection, because their inspection is a sales call, and they are paid to find a problem. Instead, measure it. Photograph the crack with a coin next to it for scale, note the date, and mark the very end of it with a pencil line and that day's date written on the wall. Then watch. Over the next few weeks and months, you will see whether it grows past your mark or stays put. While you watch, fix the water, because drainage is the cause far more often than the foundation itself. Clean the gutters, extend the downspout several feet from the house, and make sure the soil slopes away from the walls. That alone settles a surprising number of cracks. But if you are looking at a horizontal crack in a foundation wall, a wide or growing stair-step crack in brick, any crack with one side pushed out past the other, or doors and windows that have suddenly stopped working, do not monitor that. Call a licensed structural engineer, not a repair company. For a few $100s, an engineer gives you an honest, unbiased verdict, and that single phone call can stand between you and a foundation bill that runs into 5 figures. The crack in your wall is not a blemish to be smoothed over and forgotten. It is a gauge your house installed for free, telling you in plain shapes whether the ground beneath you is holding still or quietly on the move. It deserves to be read before it is filled. So the next time a line appears in your drywall or steps its way up your brick, do not reach for the spackle and erase it. Look at its shape, measure its width, mark its end and watch. The house is showing you exactly what is happening underneath it. All you have to do is learn to read the writing on the wall. Have you ever found a crack in your wall and lost sleep wondering whether it was serious? Tell me about it in the comments. The shape, where it is, how long it has been there, and I will tell you what I think. I read every single one. And if today changed the way you look at the quiet lines running through your own walls, then something just shifted in how you see the place you live. That shift is what this channel is built on. I will see you in the next one.